Hola amigos, and welcome back to Parenting 365. Today I have a gift for you. Not a theory, not a strategy you have to write down, but a real-life skill builder for the next time your child asks you a question and then stops listening to the answer. Because yesterday, my 6-year-old did exactly that. And what happened next turned into one of the most important lessons I've ever given, by not finishing a sentence. This morning, my 6-year-old asked me a question. Daddy, why do children have to go to school? I began to answer, and somewhere in the middle of my sentence, her attention drifted. So I stopped talking. Not in anger, not to punish her, but because attention is the price we pay for wisdom. After more than 30 years working with young people, I've learned something. The moment you compete with distraction, you lose the lesson. A few minutes later, she looked at me and said, Daddy, what was your answer? And I told her, if you remember to ask me tomorrow, I will give you my best answer. And in that moment, when I stopped speaking, I wasn't trying to win. I wasn't trying to be right. I was protecting something. Because if I had repeated the answer while her mind was somewhere else, I would have taught her a dangerous lesson, that wisdom will chase you even when you are not present, that understanding will wait while your attention wanders. But that's not how life works. The most important instructions you will ever receive from a teacher, from a mentor, from a moment of consequence, are usually spoken once. Life does not rewind for a distracted mind. So I made a decision, not to punish her, but to honor the value of the answer. I wanted her to experience that learning is not something we consume passively. It is something we return to intentionally. Because attention is not just a skill, it is a form of respect. Respect for the person speaking, respect for the knowledge being given, and respect for herself. So when I told her, if you remember tomorrow, I will give you my best answer, what I was really saying was, your question matters so much that I'm willing to wait until you're fully there to receive it. I don't repeat important answers. I help my children become the kind of people who come back for them. The next evening, just before bed, my favorite time of day, because that's when we have most of our philosophical conversations, she walked up to me and said, Daddy, why do children have to go to school? Holy smokes, I thought. I could barely contain my excitement. She remembered. She had carried that question for an entire day. No reminders, no prompts, just ownership. No negotiation, no emotional pressure, just a young mind returning with purpose. And in that moment I realized this was no longer a conversation about school. This was a conversation about memory, respect, and responsibility for learning. Most people think education is something that happens in a building. It isn't. Education begins the moment a child learns. I am responsible for my attention, because a distracted mind cannot receive a meaningful answer. And a child who returns to a question is a child who is learning how to think. That is the foundation of leadership. That is the beginning of self-education. So we talked. We talked about how in some places children are required to go to school. We talked about classrooms with one adult and many young minds. We talked about how every system is only as strong as the people inside it. We talked about how real learning is never guaranteed by a location. It is activated by attention. And then we talked about our home. Because in this house, learning is not something that is delivered in bulk. It is something that is given with care, slowly, intentionally, from real life to a child we love, from a mother's culture to a daughter's identity, from a father's experience to a child's future decisions. Not mass education, but personal formation. Not information, but transformation. And I told her, "You remembered your question. That tells me something about you. You are someone who finishes what she starts. You are someone who comes back for understanding. That is what real students do. That is what real leaders do." One day, we will not be there to remind them to pay attention. One day, a teacher, a mentor, a leader, a life opportunity will speak only once. And the child who learned to listen the first time will be ready. Ready not because they were forced to learn, but because they chose to return. So no, this was not a story about school. This was a story about a young mind learning that her attention has value, and a father who waited until she was ready to receive the answer. Because the goal was never to give her information. The goal was to help her become someone who seeks it. Adios, amigos. Until the next time, enjoy your journey, and I have a few more parenting tips coming soon.